welcome to RealAg Live, everybody. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Sean Haney, your host. We got a great topic today, a lot of fun. We're going to dive into a part of the value chain that we talk about lots, but we actually don't get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We're not going to be talking horse meat. We're talking beef today. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, if you have a comment or question for today's guest, all you have to do is enter it in the comment box on the program that you're watching on. So whether you're on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, or Twitch, you can be sure to get involved in the program by typing in your question or comment and hitting send. And we'll get to as many of those as we possibly can. So don't be shy. Ask your question. Make your comment. We got a great topic today, and we're talking beef. Today's guest is, let's bring him in here. Bring him in. It is Marcel Blais. He is president of Chop Steakhouse and Bar based out of Calgary, Alberta. Hey, Marcel, how are you?
Hi there, Sean. I'm great. Good to see you again today.
Yeah, we first met about, would it be early August? The Canadian Beef Industry Conference was having their annual meeting.
That's right.
And I actually just posted that panel last week on realagriculture.com. And we had a whole discussion about sustainability and the CRSB. And CHOP recently signed on to the CRSB. Tell us about that decision and why you did that. Oh, Marcel, we lose
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Go ahead.
We actually signed on. Yeah, we're still here.
Go ahead.
We signed on with the CRSB over 5 years ago, Sean. But what was more recent was in March, just pre-COVID, literally weeks before COVID hit. We were we were the first premium casual dine-in chain to add a sustainable beef product to their actual menu nationwide. So we went coast to coast, had our burger added to the menu, which was a sustainable product. And, to your question, I think you were asking me, why did we do that? Sustainability is something that I think is on most of our minds. And, we all want the planet to be a great place for our children. And we all have to ask ourselves, what part are we doing? And at CHOP, we specialize in beef. And so it makes sense for us to focus on that particular area and get involved. And so years ago, we got involved early on, and we were relatively new at it, uninformed. But boy, it's you talk about the chain, all the way from producer to the end of the chain, steakhouse or retail. There's a lot of moving parts in between, and I've learned a lot along the journey. But for us, short answer is we did it because we want to be part of making this planet a better place.
So when you talk about sustainability, like what's the consumer looking for when they open the menu? And we've all been to a steakhouse like yourselves, where you look at it, and you're trying to figure out what cut you want, what sauce do you like. I love the blue cheese on my steak personally. So you're asking questions, but then you see that CRSB logo. What does that? Is that like a conversation starter between the waitress or waiter with the customer, or what happens in that interaction?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When people come to the steakhouse, first and foremost, they're expecting a killer steak that's cooked perfectly and a great overall experience. But, it's a multi-hour experience. And as you're there, you get a chance to digest other things. And, what's been on consumers' mind, our guests' mind more and more, is where does my food come from? And how does it get to my plate? And it's of growing importance to them. And so that CRSB logo, it's funny you ask about that, because when we first put it on our menu, our involvement with CRSB, even before the burger came on, we were proud of our involvement. We had a description of what the CRSB was. And we actually had more dialogue when there was a description about it, because most people are still learning about what the CRSB is and the kind of work that they're doing. And they're asking similar questions to you. We tried a version of the menu with just the logo, and we actually got a lot less commentary on it. So, we continue to learn even through this process, but there's no question that people are interested in where their food comes from. We've been long fielding questions about that. And the CRSB logo is starting to create dialogue with the guests. But interestingly, Sean, it's creating more dialogue with our team. And that's really valuable to us, because really, when you think of your last dining experience, a lot about where you learn, about the food, how it tastes, where it comes from, whatever your questions are, it's that exchange with the server that really resonates and that's kind of sticks in your mind rather than what you read on the menu. So both are important, but that's how I see the logo being consumed.
How do you make sure your staff when they're having those interactions? How do you make sure that they're equipped with the right information?
Yeah, I've always believed that there's two ways to have something happen. You can push it to happen, or you can pull it to happen. And I believe in pull strategies. I believe if the consumers want something, if your team wants something, they're going to get it and remember it rather than if you push it down their throat, so to speak. And so we try to create moments where we explain the exciting work we're doing with the CRSB, and we create like little teasers. We go, did you know that cattle production in Canada is good for the environment? And that's enough to get them almost going, what are you talking about? Like you're spinning something on me. And so that starts a dialogue, and the dialogue is where they learn. And so we have all sorts of training materials and so on, but it's those kinds of conversations that we have with our team that turn into the conversations table side that really result in people really learning about the good work the CRSB is doing.
I'm just going to take just do a little bit of a sidebar conversation here for a second. You said, when you go to a steakhouse, you expect it cooked, the exact right way. You have now 14 locations, I think I read, across the country. How do you make sure that happens? Like, there's the whole procurement of the cuts, so they're standardized based on, so you're not getting a huge variety, I think would be a part of it. But like, how do you make sure it happens the same way all the time, no matter if you're a chop in Edmonton or you're at one in Toronto?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you're right. We do have 14 locations, so good on you for your research. You're spot on. We just recently opened 2 weeks ago our most recent location in Chop, Halifax. So we're truly coast to coast now, really exciting time. But to your question, how the heck do we make sure that the steak's cooked perfectly in Halifax and all the way across the country in Vancouver? How do we do that? The answer is we're just crazy obsessed with the whole process. Everything from we work with our producers to make sure we source the kind of cattle that we're looking for. We work with the middle part of the chain to ensure that the beef is processed in a way that is cut exactly to our specifications. We cut our steaks slightly differently for good reason. We're always focused on the end consumer's eating experience of that steak. And one of the things that we have that's really unique to us is in every one of our restaurants, I don't know if I've told you this before, Shaun, we have a Montague Broiler. It's very different than your barbecue at home, and it's very different the under fire grills that most restaurants have. So, we're all used to seeing the flame come up from underneath, and there's the bars, and it makes the nice grill marks on the steak. We purposely don't do that at Chop because we use a different piece of equipment that actually sears the steak. And so it creates a nice crust that develops on the steak and gets nice even flavor throughout the exterior, make sure the seasoning is nice and even throughout. Then we cook it in a Montague broiler, which is specifically designed for steaks. It runs up to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Ooh. Compare that to your barbecue at home. Your barbecue would be hot at 700 to 800 degrees.
Oh, yeah, maybe,
Yeah, so we're over double that temperature and infrared heat. So the steak cooks much quicker, resulting in less moisture loss in the steak product. We also have some secret spices, dunks that we do for seasoning the steak. And of course, we let the steak rest before we bring it to you for the final experience. But there's a whole bunch of detail that goes between us meeting with the producers to make sure we get the right beef, the right fresh Canadian beef, and then everything we do in between till that final plate presentation when it lands in front of you.
Oh, I'm hungry. When you talk about making that crust on the outside, that's like perfect for somebody that likes rare to like we're moving into the blue category, but just like really rare. That has that perfect texture inside. Man, that sounds very tasty. Hey, I got a question here for you. Question from Leslie Kelly. She farms in Saskatchewan. Does Chop have opportunities for staff to go to farms and visit and learn?
Yeah, we do. We've done pasture to plate trips before where we've gone through the entire process of the beef cycle. Like I said earlier, consumers now more than ever want to know where their food comes from, and our leaders need to understand that process at an intimate level. Of course, We haven't done that recently in light of COVID,
Yeah.
and it's a fairly expensive exercise to do. But we try to do it, once a year or at least biannually, so that we can give people that experience, and it creates those memories that they can keep talking about and sharing their experience with others.
Well, I would think too that would also help with as you have no different than with you're selecting a wine. You have the wine. What are they? A sommelier? Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
They go to visit the vineyard and they have stories. Oh, I was at this vineyard. It's the same kind of story we can create around beef as well, right? Where actually, I got a story for you. I was actually at this ranch and I saw this, and the story element just adds so much at this point to the eating experience. If you watch Food Network at all, so much of it is about stories. That has to help your staff and arm them to be able to make people even more comfortable and enjoy their experience even more when they go to Chop.
Sure does. I mean, Shaun, you got me thinking. We got to find some sort of setup where they have a vineyard and cattle pasture side by side. That's the ultimate experience. You and I got to go check out. But
Yes.
all kidding aside, you're right. And we often know about the romance around wine stories, around these vineyards, and we have those pictures embedded in our head. The beef industry has just as good, if not better, stories that resonate with the public, in my opinion. In Canada, we're blessed because we're characterized by thousands of family-run operations that are producers, and these are family businesses. They're the backbone of the Canadian economy. But beyond that, they have family values, and that's what they entrench into their business. And there's a story there. When you go to a ranch, you see sometimes 3, even up to 4 generations of people living on a ranch and surviving off that business. And they're stewards of the land, and they care tremendously about the land, about their animals. And to get that kind of love, that kind of experience, and that kind of craftsmanship into this business, I think is an amazing story. And I think it's in no way second best to any wine story that I've heard out there. Yeah. The difference is in the beef industry, because there's so many layers, we're not as good at telling that story as perhaps we should be. And, I see that as one of the challenges ahead for us.
I think, I totally agree. And I think part of it too is we assume that everybody knows that story. And when somebody doesn't know the story, there's a little bit of a sense of frustration. Well, how do you not know about this? And we got to get a little bit past that and engage more and tell more of that story because people want to hear about it. And I honestly, I commend yourself and Chop for embracing that story and that narrative because, we have a history here of food, the food industry, sort of playing off some of the things that are happening on the farm and taking more of a adversarial role, whereas you've embraced it, and CRSB is a part of that. But I think it's much more in line with more of a McDonald's strategy, so to speak, where we're on the same side as producers. We can be all part of the same value chain and really help each other out. I think it's awesome.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we view it that way too, and I don't blame the frustration that's out there. It's no different than anything else. There's too much misinformation out there, and when you're passionate about something and you hear your passion mischaracterized, it's frustrating. But we view it as the opportunity that it is. There's people out there that care about it and they want to learn. So great, let's have conversations just like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're running a business though, okay? So there's the romantic part of this that we've been kind of talking about, but obviously it's got to leverage itself into sales. Clearly you believe strongly that talking about the CRSB and some of the things that are happening on the farm and communicating the stories, that leads to higher revenue. Is that been the experience early on here as you've put it on the menu?
I mean, unfortunately, that's been really difficult for us to tell.
Because of COVID.
We launched this in early March, and literally 2 weeks later, I was forced to shut down every one of our restaurants across Canada. So the reality is I can tell, though, by our team's excitement around it, that this is going to work for us long term. Will sustainability be the end-all, be-all of the answer of how we emerge out of COVID and build our sales back? No, I wouldn't say that. But every part of the steak experience is important. And as I said earlier, there is this growing sentiment of, it really matters to me where my food's coming from, and I want to be part of something that's good for the planet. And consumers are savvy, and they're voting with their dollars every day. And we intend to be on the top of their list at every opportunity. And we think this is one of the ways to get there.
Yeah, you're in a competitive space. Like, let's not that can't be understated. You are in a very there's restaurants everywhere. How do you differ yourself in that much of a what is so highly competitive in some of the big cities you're in?
Well, you nailed it. I mean, when it comes down to it, traditionally in restaurants, there's two things that stand out with the guest. It's the quality of the food and the service. For us, we have to be exceptional at service. We pride ourselves on a really authentic hospitality that's genuine, and empowering our team to deliver that hospitality. But really, you nailed it earlier. It's the steak cooking experience. It's getting that steak cooked perfect every single time. And we have an endless pursuit towards that goal. And for us, that steak experience is a special moment. It's different when you're craving a steak. When you go eat a steak, it's a different experience than almost any other food experience that you have. And it's a real thing. You talked about how I'm that rare steak eater. Like it becomes part of who you are. Yeah. It's part of your identity. And to connect with food, to someone's identity like that is really special, and that's not lost on us. So for us, it's all around the steak. It's everything about the steak.
Lara wants to know which cut of beef on the menu got the CRSB logo.
So is it Lara?
Lara, yeah.
Yeah, Lara. Lara, the steaks don't have the logo yet. The first step we did was do it with our burger. And the reason we did that is the steaks are the muscle part of the animal. We can't source enough of those yet that are sustainably verified. So what I've been doing with Shaun's help on recent shows is going around and educating people out there that we need more producers to sign up and get verified sustainable beef. Because of the volume of beef that we use, there's only enough for us to do the burger. We can't get supply of sustainable beef steaks on our menu yet, but it is our intention and goal to be the first restaurant in Canadian history to have sustainable verified steaks on their menu. So more to come. I don't have an exact timeline for you, but we're excited about it. We just need to get more producers on board.
You're pushing for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's clear. Here's what our goal is, and we just need to make it happen. We need the supply before we can make the promise. Because there's a restaurant in Lethbridge here that every time I go there, I ask for the same thing, and they're always like, "Oh, we just ran out." No, you didn't. You have not had it here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. Come on. So that you don't want to mislead your customer and then always have to talk yourself out of it, right? If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. You're going to do it right.
That's right.
You mentioned COVID. Okay, so this has got to be, in terms of running a restaurant, never mind one, but 14, 15, what a challenging time. And you said you closed all your locations. I'm assuming they've been opening up here, depending on where they are in which province. But how have you fought your way through it? What's that been like?
Well, listen, Shaun, COVID has affected virtually every single person on the planet in some way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of people out there struggling as a result of this virus in different ways. This is truly, a health crisis, and that's not lost on me. Having said all of that, you're right. We closed down. We were forced to close down every single one of our business units in mid-March. What I've seen since then has been inspiring. I've watched our teams find a way to reopen our restaurants even when we weren't allowed to have guests come in the building. We did takeout and delivery for a number of months as our only way of operating. And we had our leaders slugging it out, cooking the food, running the food to the vehicles on a skeleton crew. And it was truly inspiring to watch our team. And it was humbling to watch the support from our local communities. Pre-COVID, we weren't typically known for takeout and delivery, and COVID gave us an opportunity to get much better at it. And it's become a much bigger part of our business. And we're very grateful to our local communities for supporting us that way. The reality is COVID is not over in terms of its impacts and won't be for some time. we're still struggling to get all of the sales back that we had before. We're only at about 60% of our pre-COVID sales. And although we've reopened most of our locations, we have 2 that remain temporarily closed for, probably till November-ish. And then we also have majority of our team are back from layoff, but we're still working hard every day to grow our sales so that we can get all of our team back to work. And that's one of our top priorities right now.
One thing that I'm worried about from a Canadian perspective, okay, if you had a restaurant in Texas or Florida, Arizona, it's a little bit different. But the snow flies in Canada, and I've seen here locally in the city of Lethbridge that a lot of places have patios that didn't have patios before, and the city here has been I would say accommodating, trying to figure out how to keep some people alive from a business perspective by having those patios in the middle of the street. What happens to the restaurant industry when those patios have to close because snow starts to hit people in the butt? We're going to have to try to encourage people to come inside, and then that's more of a social distancing issue if we're still in that state. That's a bit of a concern I have. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's been the topic of a great deal of thought for not only myself, but probably everyone in our industry. The reality is it's likely going to mean a decline in sales again. But let me get a little deeper on that, Shaun. The research I've been reading is that there's like 3 buckets. And bucket 1, people are fearless, ready to go back to restaurants. Bucket 2, we're ready to go back to restaurants, but we have some cautions and concerns, and we're being mindful of how we return. And there's bucket 3, the other 30% of the population roughly, that's going, we're not ready to come back yet. So that's why we have such big sales declines. Yeah. About 15% of the people that are willing to come back are not willing to dine inside yet. And so we have work to do to make sure that they feel safe. And so at CHOP Steakhouse, what we're doing is we're putting in glass barriers between our tables. We put sanitizer on every single table. That's rolling out the next couple of weeks. We have intense protocols for our team, both on the culinary side and on the service side. Mask wearing, as everybody's become accustomed to, and personal hand sanitizer bottles that each team member can wear and use as they go throughout their shift, and a number of other things that I won't get into detail. Yeah. But suffice it to say, we have to have a large focus on health and safety because, as I said, this is a health crisis. The good news is, as restaurateurs and as a national brand, we were already good at food safety. We understand this space. We just needed to elevate our protocols to deal with the specific issue called COVID. Yeah. So for us, that's what we're facing right now. But the reality is a good chunk of the consumers are going to be slow to come back, and it's our job to earn their trust. And as the patios close, about 15% of them will choose not to dine out for some period of time by joining us indoors.
Yeah, I was at a place on Friday night, and it was pretty packed. It was it felt a little bit normal, to be honest with you, which is good to see for the industry overall. How has this impacted your procurement? Your purchasing of products to bring in to obviously turn into a dish that everybody's to enjoy. How does it impact your procurement of some of the supplies and products?
It's funny, when I was growing up in restaurants, somebody told me, a mentor of mine, there's more ways to lose a dime in restaurants than there is to make a dime. and that couldn't be more true. I'm sure everybody says that about their industry, but for us, we're very blessed and fortunate because we have such amazing vendor partners. And as you could probably tell earlier, we work all the way down the beef supply chain. And so for us, securing beef supply wasn't that big of a challenge. I think it was a greater challenge for them, but they did their job and made it seem easy. And so we were able to have a constant supply of beef that we can count on. For other products, there was temporary disruptions, and there continues to be temporary disruptions as the whole logistics chain across the world, kicks back into full speed. But, our jobs, if we're doing them correctly, is to make sure that we minimize that impact on our guests. And so far, I think we've been fairly successul.
So I maybe should have asked this at the beginning, but it sounds like you kind of grew up in this business a little bit, Marcel. How did you get, where did you kind of start in the restaurant business? And, obviously you've had a lot of success and ended up being the president of CHOP, but tell us a little bit about your path.
Yeah, I'm born and raised Grand Prairie, Alberta, and started when I was 14 years old as a busboy and host at Moxie's up
Oh,
there.
wow.
And Moxie's is one of our sister brands. And it's been probably about 13 years now that I've been involved with the Chop Steakhouse concept. Shortly after it first came to market in West Edmonton. West Edmonton was home to our very first location. And but you're right. I've been in this industry for my entire life. You and I both share an alma mater with the U of L,
Yeah.
and I continued working for the company through university, and it's been an industry that's been very kind to me and my family.
Well, that brings us to the most important question. Why is there no Chop in Lethbridge? I would like to know this. This is a got to work on
We're
that, man.
making our
Got to
way
work.
across Canada. One of the really exciting things is, despite the devastation of COVID, we're still growing. We just opened that location in Halifax. In November, we're opening up in Saskatoon. So we're excited to go to that market. And as we fill some of the larger centers across Canada, we'll start going to some of those secondary markets like Lethbridge as well. So
Yeah.
stay tuned, and we'll be coming to your market soon.
You know what's interesting is that we were talking about the story of beef, and it's a story I'm pretty passionate about myself. But I have found when you go into a restaurant now, we talked about wine in the story. We talked about beef, but even with like almost all products, it seems there's more and more from a marketing standpoint. There is some sort of story attached to them and the way we describe them. Like I think of handcrafted cocktails. I'm not sure what they were prior or who was mixing them, but you know what I mean? Like it's just some of it is really cool, and some of it you just got to sit back and be like, okay, we just change some words around and add a few adjectives, and it really appeals to people. It probably speaks to the competitiveness of the industry.
I think so. I mean, it's no different than the grocery store. I think all of us are looking on the shelves and going, which of these labels are smoke and mirrors, and which ones actually represent a real point of difference. Before COVID, Sean, people had amazing access to travel, so they were becoming quite global. They were able to go and experience different kinds of cultures and foods that come with that culture. And then they were able to come back home and Google stuff and find out recipes, ingredients, where they come from, how to make things taste differently, handcrafted cocktails and the like. So the net of that is our population is becoming much more informed about food. And because of that, the questions they're asking, it gives us an opportunity to differentiate our product. And we're excited about that. I mean, at Chop, we're able to differentiate our product. And, I talked about the way that we get a crust on our steak. Well, that's a cooking method that's different than the way you cook it at home. And that's just one of a ton of ways that you can differentiate your product. And I think it's an exciting time. I think there's going to be more segmentation in the market as it continues to mature. And I think that means more choice for consumers.
Well, Marcel, this has been a ton of fun, and I love seeing fellow University of Lethbridge grads do well and take on the world. So congratulations to yourself and Chop, and all the best through this very, very trying time of COVID, and getting to the other side of it and having a ton of success going forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean. It's always fun catching up with you. And big shout out to all of our U of L alma mater out there.
Yeah, all of them. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, appreciate it. Okay, everybody, I appreciate you tuning in today. A ton of fun. It's great to chat about something a little bit further down the value chain, because we talk about making a product and growing all these great things on the farm and doing all this stuff and trying to make sure we're trying to follow what the consumer wants. And today we heard from somebody that's dealing with the consumer face-to-face on a daily basis across the country at Chop Steakhouse. So really appreciate Marcel joining us here. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Post-show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or on Twitter, you can find us at Real Agriculture, or call the Real Ag listener line, 855-776-6147. Today on the show on Real Ag Radio on Rural Radio 147, we're going to have a conversation about low Earth satellite technology with the head telecom reporter from the Globe and Mail. This is some big, big stuff. We're talking about fiber speed internet on the farm through satellite. Starlink is, and Elon Musk is one of the leaders here, but there's a few others that are pushing it as well. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with thanks for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Live. Trying to say way too much. And we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.